Alright, so I've turned the brightness way down on my screen to save power. And I won't be looking at my screen so much. But let's continue now with part 4 of Pinocchio. Chapter 24. Pinocchio arrives at Busy Bee Island and finds the fairy again. Hoping to arrive in time to save his poor father, Pinocchio swam all night. And what a terrible night it was! The rain came down like a flood, with hailstones and terrible thunderclaps, while flashes of lightning made the world as bright as day. Towards morning he saw in the distance a long strip of land. It was an island in the midst of the sea. He tried in vain to reach the shore. The tumbling waves tossed him everywhere, as if he was straw or a stick. At last, happily, there came a huge wave that carried him out and threw him violently on the shore. He struck the shore with such force that all his ribs and joints rattled, but he comforted himself by saying, "That was another miraculous escape." Slowly, slowly the clouds cleared, the sun came out in all his splendor, and the sea became as quiet and smooth as oil. The puppet spread his clothes to dry in the sun, and began looking in every direction over that huge expanse of water to see if there was a small boat anywhere with a small man in it. But although he looked and looked, he saw only the sky and the sea, and the sails of some ships, but they were so far away that they looked no bigger than flies. "I wish I knew the name of this island," he said. "If only I could know that decent people lived here, who do not hang boys on trees. But is there nobody I can ask all these questions?" The idea of being alone, all alone, in a country where nobody lived, made him so melancholy that he was just about to cry when he saw a big fish near the shore, swimming by. It was quietly going about its own business with its head out of water. Since he did not know its name, he cried loudly, "Hullo, Mr. Fish, may I have a word with you?" "Even two, if you like," answered the fish, who was a dolphin, but so polite that there were few like him in the seas of the world. "Would you be so kind as to tell me if there are inhabited places on this island where one may eat without fear of being eaten?" "Certainly there are," answered the dolphin. "There is one not very far from here. Which road will take me there?" "Take the path on your left, and follow your nose. You can't make a mistake." "Tell me something else. You swim in the sea all day and all night. Have you, by chance, seen a small boat with my father in it?" "Who is your father?" "He is the best father in the world, and I am very likely the worst son." "As we had a very bad storm last night," said the dolphin, "the boat was probably sunk. And my father? By this time he must have been eaten by the huge shark that has been spreading death and misery in these waters for a long time." "Is he very big, this shark?" asked Pinocchio, frightened and trembling. "Is he big?" asked the dolphin. "Well, just to give you an idea, I shall merely tell you that he is larger than a 5-story house, and his mouth is so wide and deep that it would easily hold a railway train with its engines smoking and all." "Heavens above!" cried the terrified puppet, and dressing quickly, he turned to the dolphin, saying, "Good-bye, Mr. Fish. Excuse the trouble I have caused you, and many thanks for your kindness." Then he hurried down the little path, almost running. At the least noise he looked behind him, fearing to see that horrible shark as large as a 5-story house, and with a railway train in his mouth pursuing him. He had travelled about half an hour when he came to Busy Bee Town. On the streets people were hurrying back and forth on business. Everybody had something to do. Everybody was working. You could not have found an idler or a tramp if you had searched with the lamp. "I see," lazy Pinocchio told himself, "that this place will never do for me. I was not born for work." By this time he was terribly hungry, for he had had nothing to eat for more than 24 hours. not even a dish of green seeds. What could he do? To get some food there were only two ways: ask for work, or beg for pennies or bread. He was ashamed to beg. His father had told him several times that only the aged and the crippled have a right to beg. Poor, really poor in this world, those who really deserve help and pity, are those who, by reason of old age or sickness, are no longer able to earn their living by their own labour. It is everybody else's duty to work, and if they refuse to work and are hungry, so much the worse for them. Just at that moment a man passed by, tired and panting. He was pulling with great difficulty 2 carts loaded with charcoal. Pinocchio judged by his look that he was a kind man, so he approached him and, casting his eyes downward in shame, he said in a low tone, "Will you please give me a penny, for I am dying of hunger?" "Not only 1 penny," answered the man, "but I shall give you 2 if you help me draw home these loads of charcoal." "I am surprised at you," answered Pinocchio, offended. "Let me tell you that I am not a donkey. I do not draw carts." "That's all right," the coal dealer answered. "But then, my boy, if you are really so hungry, eat a couple of slices of your pride, and take care you don't get indigestion." A few minutes later a mason passed by, carrying a load of lime on his shoulder. "Sir, would you be so kind as to give a penny to a poor boy who is hungry?" "With pleasure. Come with me and carry lime," answered the bricklayer, "and instead of 1 penny I shall give you 5." "But lime is so heavy," objected Pinocchio, "and I don't want to get tired." "If you don't want to get tired, my boy, amuse yourself with being hungry, and much good may it do you." In less than half an hour 20 people passed by, and Pinocchio begged of all of them, but they all answered, "Are you not ashamed? Instead of begging on the road, go to work and earn your living." At last a kind little woman appeared carrying 2 pails of water. "Kind lady, will you let me have a drink of water from your pail?" asked Pinocchio, who was burning with thirst. "Yes, drink, my child," said the little woman, putting the pails down. When Pinocchio had had a good drink, he wiped his mouth and said, "Now I'm thirsty no more. If only I were no longer hungry." The good woman, hearing these words, said quickly, "If you carry one of these pails home, I'll give you a big piece of bread." Pinocchio looked at the pail and said neither yes nor no. "And with the bread I shall give you a nice dish of cauliflower with oil and vinegar," added the good woman. Pinocchio looked at the pail again, but he did not say yes or no. "And after cauliflower I shall give you some tasty sweets." This last temptation Pinocchio could not resist, and he said resolutely, "All right then, I will carry the pail home for you." The pail was very heavy, and his hands not being strong enough to hold it, the puppet had to put it on his head. When they arrived home, the good woman led Pinocchio to a little table already set, and put the bread, the cauliflower, and the sweets before him. Pinocchio did not eat like a human being. He gobbled everything. His stomach was like a tenement house that had been uninhabited for 5 months. Bite by bite his hunger was appeased, and he raised his head to thank the benefactress. Immediately he looked at her. He uttered a long "oh" of astonishment, and sat there with his fork in the air, his mouth full of bread and cauliflower, his eyes wide open as if he had been bewitched. "What is the matter with you?" asked the good woman, laughing. "Because it's," stammered Pinocchio, it's you remind me of, yes, 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 the same voice, the same eyes, the same hair. You have blue hair too, just as she had. Oh, dear fairy, tell me, is it you? Is it really you? Don't make me cry any more. If you only knew, I have cried so much, I have suffered so much." As he said this, Pinocchio fell on his knees before her and threw his arms round that mysterious little woman and began to cry bitterly. Chapter 25. Pinocchio promises the fairy to be good and study because he is tired of being a puppet and wishes to become a really good boy. At first, the little woman would not admit that she was the blue-haired fairy, but seeing that she had been found out, and not wishing to continue the comedy any longer, she acknowledged the fact, saying to Pinocchio, "You rascal of a puppet, how did you recognize me? It was my love for you that told me. Do you remember? When you left me, I was a little girl, and now I am a woman, nearly old enough to be your mother. I like that very much, because instead of calling you little sister, I shall call you mother. I've always wanted to have a mother, as other boys. But how did you manage to grow so quickly?" "That's a secret." "Teach it to me. I would like to be a little bigger. Look at me. I've never been more than a Tom Thumb." "But you can't grow," answered the fairy. "Why not?" "Because puppets never grow. They are born puppets, they live puppets, and they die puppets." "Oh, I'm sick of always being a puppet," cried Pinocchio, slapping his wooden head. "It's about time I became a man, like other people." "If you only deserved it, you could become one." "Really? And what can I do to deserve to become a man?" "It's very easy. You begin by being a good boy." "Why? Do you mean to say that I'm not a good boy?" "You are anything but. Good boys are obedient, and you—" "I am never obedient. Good boys like to work and study, and you—" "And I am an idle vagrant all the year round. Good boys always tell the truth, and I always tell lies. And good boys like to go to school, and school gives me pain, but from this day forward I shall turn over a new leaf. Do you promise to do that?" "Yes, I do. I shall be a good little boy, and be the consolation of my father. Where can my poor father be?" "I don't know." "Will I ever be lucky enough to see him again?" "I hope so. Yes, I am sure of it." Hearing this, Pinocchio was so happy that he took the fairy's hands and kissed them, almost mad with joy. Then, looking up at her with loving eyes, he said, "Tell me, mother dear, it wasn't true, then, that you were dead?" "It seems not," answered the fairy, smiling. "If you only knew how sad I was, and how my heart ached when I read, 'Here lies.'" "I know, and that is why I have forgiven you, as you were really sorry. I knew that you had a good heart, and if a child has a good heart, even if he is mischievous and full of bad habits, there is hope that he will mend his ways. That is why I came here to look for you. I shall be your mamma." "Oh, lovely!" shouted Pinocchio, jumping for joy. "You must always obey me and do as you are told." "Oh, yes, yes, yes. Tomorrow," added the fairy, "you will start to go to school." Pinocchio grew a little less joyful. "Then you will choose some professional trade, whichever you like." Pinocchio made a wry face. "What are you muttering between your teeth?" asked the fairy angrily. "I was saying," grumbled Pinocchio, "that it seems to me too late for me to go to school now." "No, my lad. Remember always that it's never too late to learn and get educated." "But I don't want to learn any professional trade." "Why not?" "Because I don't like work." "My child," said the fairy, "people who talk like that generally end in a hospital or in a prison. Remember that every man, rich or poor, must find something to do in this world. Everybody must work. Woe to those who lead idle lives. Idleness is a dreadful disease, of which one should be cured immediately in childhood. If not, one never gets over it." These words touched Pinocchio's heart. He lifted his head quickly and said to the fairy, "I will study. I will work. I will do everything you tell me, for I am sick of being a puppet. I want to become a real boy, whatever I have to do for it. You promised that I could, didn't you? Yes, it's true. I promised, and now it depends on you. Chapter 26. Pinocchio and his schoolmates go to the seashore to see this terrible shark. Next day, Pinocchio went to school. Imagine what those mischievous boys did when they saw a puppet coming to their school. It seemed as if their laughter would never come to an end. One took his cap away, and another pulled his jacket behind. One of the boys tried to make a big mustache under his nose with ink, and another again tried to tie strings to his hands and feet to make him dance. Pinocchio pretended not to notice them at first, but at last he lost his patience, and, turning to his worst teasers, he told them menacingly, "Take care, boys. I didn't come here to be your clown. I respect others, and I want to be respected." "Good for you, Peacock. You talk like a book," howled the rogues, laughing more than ever, and one of them, more impertinent than the others, put out his hand to seize the puppet's nose, but he was not quick enough, for Pinocchio kicked his shins under the table. "Oh, oh, what hard feet!" cried the boy, rubbing the bruises on his aching shins. "And what elbows! They're even harder than his feet!" exclaimed another, who had received a blow in the stomach for his rude jokes. After a few kicks and blows, Pinocchio won the respect and liking of the whole school, and they all made friends with him. Even the master praised him because he was attentive, studious, and intelligent, first to arrive at school and the last to leave when school was over. His only fault was that he made too many friends. Some of these friends were well known as good-for-nothings, unwilling to study. The master warned him daily, and the good fairy never failed to repeat it. "Be careful, Pinocchio. Those bad friends of yours will end up making you lose your love for our books. I hope they won't lead you into any great trouble." "Oh, there's no such danger," answered the puppet, shrugging his shoulders and touching his forehead with his finger as if to say, "There's too much good sense here inside." Now, it happened one day, as he was on his way to school, that he met some of these friends, who asked him, "Have you heard the great news?" "No." "They say that, not far away from here, there's a shark in the sea, as big as a mountain." "You don't say so! I wonder if it's the same shark that was there on the night when my poor father was drowned. We're going to the beach to see it. Will you come too?" "Not I. I'm going to school." "Why should you go to school? We can go to school tomorrow. One lesson more or less won't change us. We'll still remain the same blockheads." "But what will the master say?" "He can say what he likes. He is paid to find fault all day long." "And my mother?" "Oh, mothers never find out anything," answered those wicked boys. "I know what I'll do," said Pinocchio. "I have certain reasons for seeing the shark, but I'll go after school." "You poor blockhead," said one of them. "Do you think a fish of that size will wait for you? When he's tired of being in one place, he'll go to another, and then that'll be that." "How long does it take to go to the beach?" asked the puppet. "We can be there and back in an hour." "Well, come on then. Whoever runs fastest is the best chap," cried Pinocchio. At this starting sign, all the boys ran across the fields with their books and slates under their arms. Pinocchio led them, for he ran as if he had wings on his feet. From time to time he turned to poke fun at his friends who were a long way behind him, and when he saw them panting, covered with dust, and with their tongues hanging, he laughed heartily. The poor boy did not guess at that moment what terrors and dreadful disasters were awaiting him. Chapter 27. Great battle between Pinocchio and his friends during which one of them is wounded and Pinocchio is arrested. When he arrived at the shore, Pinocchio looked at the sea, but he saw no shark. The sea was as smooth as a great mirror. "Well, where's the shark?" he asked, turning to his friends. Perhaps he has gone to breakfast," said one of them, laughing. "Or perhaps he went to bed to have a nap," said another, laughing still louder. Their silly answers and stupid laughter told Pinocchio that it was all a joke, and that he had believed a lie. He was very angry, and he said indignantly, "May I know what your idea was in telling me that story about the shark?" "It was great fun, to be sure," the rogues answered in chorus. "Well, what was it?" "We wanted you to stay away from school and come with us. Aren't you ashamed to be so proper and industrious every day? Aren't you ashamed to study so hard?" "And why should you mind how hard I study?" "We mind it because you make us look so small in the master's eyes." "Why?" "Because boys who study always make those who don't small by comparison, and we don't like it. We have some pride too." "What can I do, then, to please you?" "You must do as we do, and hate the school and the lessons and the master, our three great enemies." "And suppose I choose to keep on studying? Then we'll have nothing to do with you, and we'll take the very first chance to get even with you." "Really?" "You make me laugh," said the puppet, shaking his head. "Take care, Pinocchio," said one of the big boys, facing him. "Don't think you can lord it over us. Don't think you can crow over us. If you aren't afraid of us, we're not afraid of you. Remember, you're alone, and we are seven." "Seven, like the 7 deadly sins," said Pinocchio, laughing. "Did you hear that? He has insulted us. He has called us the 7 deadly sins. Pinocchio, say you're sorry, or it will be the worse for you." "Coo, coo," said the puppet, putting his outstretched fingers to his nose. "Pinocchio, you'll be sorry. Coo, coo. We'll beat you like a donkey. Coo, coo. You'll go home with a broken nose. Coo, coo." "I'll give you coo, coo," shouted the most daring of the boys. "Take this for a start, and keep it for supper." With this he gave him a blow on the head. But it was, as the saying goes, give and take, for the puppet, as was to be expected, returned the blow, and in a moment the fight became general and furious. Pinocchio was alone, but he defended himself like a hero. His hard wooden feet kept his enemies at a respectful distance. Wherever those feet touched, they left a black mark that would not easily be forgotten. The bad boys, angry because they could not get near Pinocchio, began to use other weapons. They unstrapped their school bags and began to throw their books, primers and grammars, dictionaries, geography and other school books. But the puppet had sharp eyes and dodged so quickly that the books all flew over his head into the sea. What do you suppose the fish did? Thinking those books were something to eat, they came in shoals, but hardly had they tasted a page or two, or a cover page, when they spat it out again, with a grimace that seemed to say, "We are used to much better food than this." The fight was growing more furious when suddenly a big crab that had come out of the water and climbed onto the beach called loudly in a voice like a trumpet with a cold, "Stop it, you rascals! These schoolboy fights always end badly. Something bad will surely happen." Poor crab, he might as well have preached to the wind. Pinocchio was no better than the rest, and said rudely to him, "Shut up, you detestable crab! Take rather some lozenges for the cold in your throat. Go to bed and take some medicine." Just then the boys who had thrown away all their own books saw Pinocchio's school bag lying on the ground, and in less time than it takes to tell it, they took possession of it. Among the books there was a large one bound in a strong board with a leather back and corners. It was a treatise on arithmetic. You can imagine for yourselves how heavy and large it must have been. One of these rascals seized the volume and threw it at Pinocchio's head with all the force he could muster. But instead of hitting the puppet, it struck one of his own friends on the head. The child turned as white as a sheet and shouted, "Oh, Mamma, help me! I am dying!" and fell his full length on the sand. At that, the frightened boys ran away, and in a few moments they were out of sight. But Pinocchio stayed there, and although from sorrow and fright he was more dead than alive, he wet his handkerchief in the sea and put it on the poor boy's temples, weeping bitterly, calling him by name and saying, "Eugene, poor Eugene, open your eyes and look at me. Why don't you answer? I didn't hurt you. Believe me, it wasn't I. Open your eyes, Eugene. If you keep them shut, I shall die too. Alas, alas, what shall I do? How shall I have the courage to go back to my mother? What will become of me? Where can I fly to hide myself? Oh, how many thousand times better would it have been if I had gone to school? Why did I listen to bad friends? They are my ruin. The master told me so, and my mother said, 'Beware of evil companions.' But I am obstinate and a fool. I listen to them, and then do as I please, and afterwards I have to suffer for it. It has always been so since I was born. I've never had a really good quarter of an hour in my life. Oh dear, what will become of me?" Pinocchio was still crying, moaning, and striking his head and calling Eugene, when suddenly he heard approaching footsteps. He turned and saw two policemen. "What are you doing there on the ground?" they asked the puppet. "I am helping my schoolmate. Is anything wrong with him?" "I think so, no doubt about it," said one of the policemen, bending over Eugene and looking at him closely. "This boy is wounded on the temple. Who did it?" "Not I," stammered Pinocchio, frightened. "If it wasn't you, who was it then?" "Not I," repeated Pinocchio. "What was he wounded with?" "With this book." The puppet picked up the treatise on arithmetic, bound in board and leather, and showed it to the policeman. "And whose book is this?" "Mine." "That's enough. There's no more to say. Get up and come with us." "But I—" "Come along." "But I'm innocent." "Come along." Before leaving, the policeman called some fishermen who were rowing near the shore, and said to them, "We are leaving this wounded boy with you. Take him home and look after him. We shall be back tomorrow." Then they turned to Pinocchio, who had to walk between them, and they said as a military command, "Forward, and step lively, or it will be much the worse for you." Without waiting for them to repeat it, the puppet set out on the path that led to the village. The poor puppet did not know where his head was, but thought he was dreaming a dreadful dream. He was almost beside himself. His eyes saw double, his legs trembled, his tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth, so that he could not speak. Yet in the midst of his awe and bewilderment, there was one thought that pierced his tormented heart like a thorn, and thought he would have to pass under the good fairy's windows between two policemen. He would rather have died. They had just entered the village when the wind blew off Pinocchio's cap and carried it some 10 yards away. "Do you mind if I go and get my cap?" Pinocchio asked the policeman. "Yes, go, but hurry." The puppet picked up his cap, but instead of putting it on his head, he took it between his teeth and began running towards the sea. Thinking it would be hard to catch him, the policeman sent a big mastiff after him that had won the first prizes in all the dog races. Pinocchio ran, but the dog ran faster. People all came to the windows and ran down the street to see the end of that fierce race, but they could not see it, for Pinocchio and the dog raised so much dust on the street that in a few minutes nothing could be seen. Okay. Chapter 28. Pinocchio is in danger of being fried as a fish. There was a moment during this fierce race when Pinocchio felt himself lost. Well, you must know that Alidoro was the mastiff's name, had almost caught him. The puppet could hear the dreadful beast panting close behind him. They were separated only by inches, and he even felt its hot breath. Fortunately, by this time he was near the beach, and it was only a few steps to the sea. As soon as he reached the shore, the puppet jumped like a frog, and he was far out in the water. Alidoro wanted to stop, but as he was going so fast, he was carried out into the water too. Unfortunately, he could not swim, so he poured desperately, trying to keep his nose above water, but the more he tried, the more he went under. When he rose to the surface, his eyes were almost jumping out of his head, and he barked, "I'm drowning! I'm drowning!" "Drown then," answered Pinocchio, who was now a good distance away and out of all danger. "Help me, Pinocchio! Save my life! Oh, oh!" And at that desperate cry, the puppet, who was really very kind-hearted, took pity on him, and turning to the dog, he said, "If I save your life, do you promise not to bother me any more, or run after me?" "I promise, I promise. Be quick, for pity's sake, for in another half-minute I'll be dead." Pinocchio still hesitated, but then he remembered his father's saying that no one ever loses by doing a good deed. He swam to Alidoro, and holding him by the tail with both hands, he pulled him safe and sound to the dry sandy beach. The poor dog could not stand up. He had drunk, in spite of himself, so much salt water that it was like a balloon. However, the puppet did not dare to trust him completely, so he thought it better to jump into the sea again. As he swam away, he called to the friend he had rescued, "Goodbye, Alidoro, a good journey to you, and give my love at home." "Goodbye, Pinocchio," answered the dog. "A thousand thanks for saving my life. You were very kind to me, and in this world one good deed deserves another. Should you ever need me, I shall remember you." Pinocchio went on swimming, keeping near the shore. At last he thought he had reached a safe place. Looking round the beach, he saw a cave among the rocks, with a long column of smoke coming out of it. "There must be a fire in that cave," he said to himself. "So much the better. I can warm and dry myself, and then we shall see." Having come to this decision, he swam near the rocks, but just as he was climbing out, he felt something rising under the water, and it lifted him out on the beach. He tried to escape, but it was too late, for to his great surprise he found himself in a big net among a number of fish of every shape and size, flapping and jumping as if they were all mad. At the same time he saw, coming out of the cave, a fisherman who was so ugly that he looked like a sea monster. Instead of hair, there grew on his head a bush thickly covered with green leaves. His skin was green, his eyes were green, and his long beard that reached to the ground was green. He looked like a huge green lizard standing on his hind legs. When the fisherman had taken the net out of the sea, he shouted joyfully, "Ah, thank heaven! I shall have a fine meal of fish today." "How lucky I am not to be a fish," said Pinocchio to himself, having gathered a little courage. The net full of fish was taken into the cave, which was dark and smoky, and in the middle of it there was a big frying pan full of boiling oil, which smelled so strongly that it nearly took one's breath away. "Now we shall see the fish we've caught," said the green fisherman, and putting one of his big misshapen hands, which looked like baker's shovels, into the net, he took out a handful of mullet. "These mullet will be good," he said, looking at them and smelling them with anticipation. Then he threw them into a pan without any water. He repeated this operation several times, and as he drew out the fish, his mouth watered, and he said joyfully, "These whiting will be excellent. These sardines are exquisite. These crabs will be excellent. These anchovies will be fine." As you may imagine, the whiting, the sardines, The crabs and the anchovies all went together into the dish to keep the mullet company. The last in the net was Pinocchio. When the fisherman pulled him out, he opened wide with his green eyes, and cried, almost frightened, "What kind of fish is this? I have never tasted such a fish." Having looked him over carefully several times, he finished by saying, "I see, it must be a crab." Pinocchio was hurt at being mistaken for a crab, and he said indignantly, "What do you mean by calling me a crab? Nice way to treat me. Let me tell you, I'm a puppet." "A puppet?" said the fisherman. "In truth, a puppet fish is new to me. All the better. I shall eat you with very great pleasure." "Eat me? Will you understand once and for all that I am not a fish? Don't you see that I can talk and reason as you do?" "That's right," answered the fisherman. "And now, seeing you are a fish that can speak and reason as I do, I shall treat you with great consideration." "And what will that be?" "As a token of friendship and particular consideration, I shall let you choose the way how you should be cooked. Would you prefer to be fried in oil in a pan, or stewed with tomato sauce?" "To tell the truth," answered Pinocchio, "if I must choose, I prefer to get back my freedom and go home." "You're joking! How can you think I'd lose this chance to taste such a rare fish? You don't catch puppet fish every day. Leave it to me. I shall fry you in the pan with all the other fish, and you'll be quite happy. To be fried in company is always a consolation." Hearing this, the miserable Pinocchio cried and screamed and begged for mercy, sobbing, "How much better it would have been if I had gone to school. I pay dearly for listening to such friends. Ugh, ugh, ugh." And because he wriggled like an eel, and made every effort to escape from Green Fisherman's hands, the fisherman took a long bulrush, and binding him hand and foot like a sausage, threw him into the dish with the others. When he got a wooden jar full of flour, and began rolling all the fish in it, and as fast as he was done with them, he threw them into the frying pan. The first to dance in the boiling oil were the poor Whiting, then came the crabs, the sardines, the sole, and the anchovies. At last it was Pinocchio's turn, who, being so near death, and such a terrible death, trembled so much and was so frightened that he could no longer find voice or even breath to beg for mercy. The poor boy could only beg with his eyes, but the Green Fisherman, without even looking at him, rolled him over 5 or 6 times in the flour, covering him so completely that he looked like a puppet made of plaster. Then he took him by the head and... Chapter 29. Pinocchio goes back to the fairy's house. She promises him that the next day he will no longer be a puppet but a boy. Grand breakfast of coffee and milk to celebrate the coming event. Just as the fisherman was about to throw Pinocchio into the frying pan, a big dog entered the cave, drawn there by the strong, delicious odor of fried fish. "Get out!" ordered the fisherman, threatening him and still holding the floury puppet in his hand. But the poor dog was starving, and he howled and wagged his tail as if to say, "Just give me one mouthful of fish and I'll go away." "Get out, I tell you," repeated the fisherman, getting ready to kick him. But the dog was far too hungry to care about being kicked, and growled at the fisherman. Growling at the fisherman, he showed his sharp teeth. Just then a faint little voice was heard in the cave, saying, "Save me, Alidoro! If you don't save me, I shall be fried." The dog at once recognized Pinocchio's voice, and he was amazed to see that it came from the floury bundle in the fisherman's hand. What did he do then? What do you think? He jumped, seized the bundle between his teeth, and holding it carefully, ran out of the cave and away like lightning. The fisherman was terribly angry to see the fish he had so badly wanted to eat snatched from him, and he ran after the dog, but he had run only a few steps when he had a violent fit of coughing and had to go back. When Alidoro came to the road leading to the village, he stopped and placed Pinocchio gently on the ground. "How can I thank you?" said the puppet. "No need to thank me," answered the dog. "You saved my life, and such a good turn deserves another. You know we must all help each other in this world. How did you come to the cave?" "I was lying on the sand, more dead than alive, when the wind brought me the odor of fried fish. An odor such as that gave me an appetite, and I followed it. If I had been later—" "Don't speak of it," yelled Pinocchio, who was still trembling with fear. "Don't mention it. If you had been later, I'd already have been fried and eaten and digested. Brrr! It makes me shiver just to think of it." Alidoro laughed and held out his right paw to the puppet, who shook it heartily as a sign of friendship, and then they parted. The dog went home, but Pinocchio, when he was left alone, went to a little house nearby, where an old man was sitting at the door, and said, "Tell me, good old man, do you know anything about a poor boy, Eugene, who was wounded on the head?" "Some fishermen carried him to this house, but now he is dead?" interrupted Pinocchio sadly. "No, he is alive, and went home." "Really? Truly?" cried the puppet, jumping for joy. "So then his wound wasn't serious?" "It might have been very serious. It might have killed him," answered the old man, "for they threw a heavy bound book at his head." "Who threw it?" "One of his schoolmates, a certain Pinocchio." "Who is this Pinocchio?" inquired the puppet, as if he had never heard of him. "They say he's a very bad boy, a vagabond, and a perfect good-for-nothing. Slander, pure slander." "Do you know this Pinocchio?" "I know him by sight," replied the puppet. "And what do you think of him?" asked the old man. "I think he is a very good boy, eager to study. He is obedient and loves his father and his family." While telling all these fibs, the puppet touched his nose, and seeing that it had grown several inches, he grew very frightened and cried, "No, no, don't believe what I have said. I know Pinocchio very well, and can assure you he's a very bad boy. He is idle and disobedient, and instead of going to school, he amuses himself in the society of evil companions." As soon as he had said this, his nose grew shorter, as short as it was to begin with. "Why are you so white?" asked the old man suddenly. "I'll tell you. Without noticing it, I rubbed myself against a wall that had just been whitewashed," answered the puppet, for he was ashamed to confess that he had been floured like a fish, prepared for being fried. "But what happened to your jacket, and your trousers, and your cap?" "I met with thieves, and they robbed me of my clothes. Do you happen to have some old clothes you could give me? Then I could go home." "My child, I have nothing but a little bag in which I keep beans. If you want to have it, take it. You are welcome to it." There was no need to ask Pinocchio twice. He took the little bag, and cutting one hole in the bottom with the scissors, and one on each side for his arms, he put it on like a shirt, and, in that rough garb, he started for home. But as he went, he began to feel very uncomfortable. He took one step forward, and then one backward, saying to himself, "How can I ever approach that kind fairy? What will she say when she sees me? Will she forgive this second naughtiness? I don't think she will. Oh, I'm sure she won't, and it serves me right, for I am a wicked boy, always promising to better myself, and never keeping my word." It was night when he reached that village, and very dark. As it was a stormy night, and was raining heavily, he went direct to the fairy's house, resolved to knock at the door, knowing he would be let in. But when he came to the door, he was frightened to knock, and ran back some distance. He came to the door a second time, but could not make a final decision a third time. It was just the same. The fourth time he seized the iron knocker, and trembling, let it fall very lightly. He waited and waited, and at last, after waiting half an hour, a window was opened on the top floor. The house had 4 floors, and a big snail with a tiny light on her head looked out and said, "Who is there at this hour?" "Is the fairy at home?" asked the puppet. "The fairy is asleep, and you mustn't disturb her. But who are you?" "I am I." "I? Who is I?" "Pinocchio." "Who is Pinocchio?" "The puppet who lives with the fairy." "Ah, I see," said the snail. "Wait for me. I'll come down at once and open the door." "Hurry, for pity's sake, I'm dying of cold." "My lad, I am a snail, and snails are never in a hurry." An hour passed, then 2 hours, but the door was not opened. Pinocchio, who was wet and shivering with cold and fright, gathered all his courage and knocked again a little louder. At this a window opened on the 3rd floor, and the same snail looked out. "Dear little snail," cried Pinocchio from the street, "I have been waiting 2 hours, and 2 hours in this awful weather seems longer than 2 years. Hurry up, for heaven's sake!" "My lad," said the sluggish, calm snail, "my lad, I am a snail, and snails are never in a hurry." And the window was closed. Not long after, the clock struck midnight, then 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, but the door was still closed. At last Pinocchio lost his patience. In a rage he seized the knocker to strike a blow that would shake the whole house, but suddenly the iron knocker turned into an eel, and, slipping out of his hands, disappeared in the stream that was running in the street. "Oh ho!" shouted Pinocchio, blind with rage. "If the knocker can run away, I can kick the door." And drawing back, he gave a huge kick against the door. He kicked so hard that his foot went through the wood, and when he tried to pull it back, he couldn't. His foot was embedded in the door as firmly as a nail driven by a hammer. Imagine poor Pinocchio. He had to spend the rest of the night with one foot on the ground and the other in the door. Finally, at dawn, the door was opened. That kind snail had spent only 9 hours coming down from the 4th story to the door. She must have been in a terrible hurry. "What are you doing there, with your foot in the door?" she asked, laughing. "It was an accident. Won't you try, kind snail, to free me from this trouble?" "My lad, this is a job for a carpenter, and I have never been a carpenter. Beg the fairy to help me. The fairy is sleeping and mustn't be disturbed. What can I do all day, stuck to this door?" "You can amuse yourself by counting the ants that are passing by. At least bring me something to eat, for I am terribly hungry." "At once," said the snail. In fact, 3.5 hours later, Pinocchio saw her coming back with a silver tray on her head, holding some bread, a roast chicken, and 4 ripe apricots. "Here is the breakfast the fairy sends you," said the snail. Seeing all those good things, the puppet was quite relieved, but how disappointed he grew when he discovered that the bread was plaster, the chicken made of board, and the 4 apricots coloured alabaster. He wanted to cry, and in his despair he tried to throw away the tray and all that was on it, but instead, owing to his grief and his great weakness, he fainted. When he came to himself, he was lying on a sofa, and the fairy was beside him. "I shall forgive you once more," said the fairy, "but never more if you misbehave again." Pinocchio vowed and promised that he would study and always be good, and he kept his word for the rest of the year. He was first in the examinations, and became the best scholar in the school. His conduct was so satisfactory and praiseworthy that the fairy was very pleased, and said tomorrow your wish shall be granted. Do you mean tomorrow you shall cease to be a wooden puppet and become a real boy?" No one without seeing Pinocchio at the moment he heard this longed-for news can imagine his joy. All his classmates were invited to the fairy's house the next day for a grand breakfast to celebrate the important event. The fairy prepared 200 cups of coffee with cream and 400 bread rolls, buttered on both sides. The day promised to be a most happy and pleasant one, but most unfortunately, in the lives of puppets there is always a but that spoils everything. Chapter 30. Pinocchio listens to his friend Lampwick, who is going to Playland. As one would expect, Pinocchio asked permission from the fairy to go to the village and invite his friends for the next day. The fairy said, "Yes, by all means, go and invite your friends for breakfast, but remember to be back before dark. Do you understand?" "I promise to be back in an hour," said the puppet. "Be careful, Pinocchio. Children make promises very easily, but they are not so ready to keep their promises." "But I'm different from other children. When I say a thing, I do it." "We shall see. This time, if you are disobedient, so much the worse for you." "Why?" "Because children who do not follow the advice of those who are wiser than they are always come to grief." "But I have learned my lesson," said Pinocchio, "and I shall never blunder again." "We shall see if that's true." The puppet said not a word more, kissed the good fairy, who was like a mother to him, and ran out of the house, singing and dancing. In less than an hour he had invited all his friends. Some of them accepted at once with pleasure, others waited to be urged. But when they heard that the rolls which were to be dipped in the coffee and milk would be buttered on both sides, they all said, "Yes, we'll come too, to please you." Now you must know that Pinocchio had, among his schoolmates, one favourite of whom he was very fond. His name was Romeo, but everyone called him by his nickname, Lampwick, because he was so thin, long, and bright, just like a new wick on a night lamp. Lampwick was the laziest and most mischievous boy in the school, but Pinocchio liked him none the less. In fact, he went to him first of all, but he was not at home. He went back a second time, but no Lampwick. A third time, but still in vain. Where could he be? He searched for him everywhere, and finally he found him hiding under the porch of a peasant's house. "What are you doing there?" asked Pinocchio, creeping under the porch. "I'm waiting for midnight. When I'm going—" "Where are you going?" "Far, very far away. I went to your place 3 times looking for you. What do you want with me?" "Have you not heard the great news? Don't you know of my good fortune?" "What?" "From tomorrow I shall no longer be a puppet, but a boy like you and the other boys. Much good may it do you. And tomorrow I expect you at my house for breakfast. But didn't I tell you that I'm going away tonight?" "At what time?" "At midnight." "Where are you going?" "I'm going to live in a country, the most beautiful country in the world, a real dreamland." "What's its name?" "It's called Playland. Why don't you come too?" "I certainly not." "You are wrong, Pinocchio. Believe me, if you don't come, you will be sorry. Where could you find a better place for us boys? There's no school there, no masters, and no books. In that heavenly place no one ever studies. There's no school on Saturday, and in every week there are 6 Saturdays and one Sunday. Just imagine! The autumn holidays begin in January and last till the 31st of December. Now a place like that is the ideal place to live in. That's how all civilized countries should be run. But how do they pass the time in Playland? How? Play and amuse themselves from morning till night. Then they go to bed and start again next morning. What do you think of that?" Um, said Pinocchio, and shook his head as if to say, "That sort of life wouldn't be too bad." "Now then, will you come, or won't you? Yes or no? Make up your mind." "No, no, no, and finally no. I promised the good fairy to be a good boy. and I must keep my promise. In fact, it's nearly evening, so I must leave you and hurry back. Goodbye, and a pleasant journey. Where are you going in such a hurry? I'm going home. The fairy wants me to be home before dark. Come on, wait a little longer. I shall be too late. Just 2 minutes. And if the fairy scolds me, let her scold. When she's done scolding, she'll stop, said that rascal of a lampwick. How are you going? Alone or in company? Alone? There'll be more than 100 boys with me. Are you going on foot? A stagecoach is coming soon to take us to that dream country. Oh, what wouldn't I give if the coach were coming right now? Why? Because I could see you all starting together. Stay a little longer, and you can do so. No, no, I must go. Wait just 2 more minutes. I waited too long already. The fairy won't know what's happened to me. Poor fairy. Is she afraid the bats will eat you? No, no, but, continued Pinocchio, are you absolutely sure there are no schools in that country? Not a single one. And no masters? Not one. And no one ever has to study? Never, never, never. What a beautiful country, sighed Pinocchio. Of course I've never been there, but I can imagine what it must be like. Why don't you come then? It's useless to tempt me. I've promised the good fairy to be an obedient boy, and I shall not break my word. Well, goodbye then, and give my love to the boys at the schools, and to all the high schools too, if you meet them on the street. Goodbye, Lampwick. I wish you a pleasant journey. I hope you'll have a fine time, and think of your friends now and then. Saying this, the puppet took a few steps, but then stopped, and turning to his friend, he asked, "Are you quite sure that there are 6 Saturdays and 1 Sunday in a week?" "Quite." "Are you sure, but really sure, that holidays begin on the 1st of January and end on the 31st of December?" "Perfectly sure." "What a wonderful country," said Pinocchio delightedly. Then he added quickly, with a final resolution, "Well, goodbye, and I hope you have a good journey." "Goodbye." "How long before you start?" "Oh, a little over an hour." "A pity. If it were only 1 hour I could perhaps be tempted to wait and see you off." "And the fairy?" "I've waited so long already, an hour more or less wouldn't matter." Poor Pinocchio. "And if the fairy scolds you?" "Never mind, I'd let her scold. When she's done scolding, she'll stop." Meanwhile it grew very dark. Suddenly they saw a little light moving in the distance, and heard bells tinkling, people talking, and the hooting of a horn. Very faint and low, like the humming of a wasp. "There it is!" exclaimed Lampwick, jumping to his feet. "What is it?" Pinocchio asked softly. "It's the coach, coming for me." "Do you want to come too? Yes or no?" "But is it true," asked the puppet, "that children never have to study in that country?" "Never, never, never." "What a wonderful country! What a beautiful country! What a marvelous country!" Chapter 31. Pinocchio goes away to Playland, where he spends 5 months. At last the coach arrived, without making the least noise, for the wheels were padded with rags and tow. It was drawn by 12 pairs of donkeys, all the same size but of different colors. Some were grey, some white, some spotted, others again were yellow and blue in large stripes. But the funniest thing about them was that these 12 pairs, that is, 24 donkeys, were not shod like other animals. They had on men's boots of white leather. And the driver? Imagine a small man, broader than he is long, soft and greasy as butter, with a small face like a red tomato, a little mouth that is always laughing, and a soft caressing voice like that of a cat that is mewing to the lady of the house for cream. All the boys took a fancy to him as soon as they saw him, and they all hurried to get in first and go to that most delightful country known on the map as True Playland. The coach was already full of boys between 8 and 12 years old, pressed together like salted fish in a barrel. They were crowded and uncomfortable, and they could hardly breathe, but no one said a word. No one complained. The consolation of knowing that in a few hours they would be in a land where there were no books or schools or masters made them accept anything, and they were so happy that they did not feel discomfort, weariness, hunger, thirst, or sleepiness. As soon as the coach stopped, the little man turned to Lampwick, and, with many bows and grimaces, said to him, smiling, "Tell me, my fine lad, would you also like to go to that happy country?" "I want to go, most certainly, but, as you see, my dear lad, there is no room. The coach is full." "It doesn't matter," replied Lampwick. If there's no room inside, I'll find some place on the crossbar." And he jumped up astride the crossbar. "And you, my love," said the little man, addressing Pinocchio with a flattering smile, "what are you going to do? Are you coming or staying behind?" "I'm staying here," answered Pinocchio, "for I am going home. I want to study and be a very good scholar, like all well-brought-up boys." "Much good may it do you, Pinocchio!" cried Lampwick. "Listen to me. Come with us. We'll have a marvelous time." "No, no, no! Come with us. We'll have lots of fun!" shouted some voices inside the coach. "Come with us. We'll all be happy!" shouted hundreds of voices together. "If I come with you, what would my good fairies say?" continued Pinocchio. "Don't worry about that. Think only that we are going to a country where we'll have nothing but fun from morning till night." Pinocchio did not answer. He only sighed. He sighed a second time, a third time, and at last he said, "Make a little room for me. I am coming." "Everything is full," replied the little man, "but to show you how happy I am that you are with us, I shall give you my place." "And what will you do?" "I shall walk." "No, I can't let you do that. I'd rather ride on one of the donkeys," cried Pinocchio. So saying, he went up to the donkey harnessed to the right side of the shaft, and wanted to jump on his back, but the beast turned and kicked him in the stomach, sending him sprawling with his legs in the air. Think of all those impertinent boys nearly bursting with laughter. But the little man did not laugh. He went to that kicking donkey, and pretending to give him a kiss, he bit off half his right ear. While he was doing this, Pinocchio, still angry, got up from the ground, and with one leap jumped on the donkey's back. He jumped so splendidly that all the boys stopped laughing and shouted, "Hurrah, Pinocchio!" and applauded as if they would never stop. But suddenly the donkey kicked so high with his hind legs that he threw the poor puppet onto a heap of stones. The boys laughed at him again, but the little man, instead of laughing, went to the other side of the kicking beast and bit off half of his left ear. Then he told the puppet, "Now get on his back. You needn't be frightened. That donkey is very obstinate, but I've whispered something in his ear, and I think he'll be obedient and gentle now." Pinocchio mounted again, and the coach started to move, but while the donkeys galloped and the coach rolled over the paving stones, he thought he heard a voice which was so low that he could hardly hear the words saying, "You poor fool! You decided to do as you please, but you'll be sorry for it." Pinocchio was frightened and looked around to see where these words came from, but he could see nothing. The donkeys galloped, the stagecoach rolled over the stones, and the boys inside slept. Lampwick snored like a bear, and the little man sang between his teeth, "Everybody sleeps through the night, while I never sleep." A little way farther on, Pinocchio heard again the low voice saying, "Remember this, you fool! Boys who won't study and who desert their school, their books and their masters, always come to a bad end. I have tried it, and I know what I am talking about. The day will come when you will weep, as I am weeping now, but then it will be too late." When he heard these whispered words, the puppet was more frightened than ever. He jumped down from the donkey's back, and took him by the bridle. Imagine his surprise when he saw that the donkey was crying just like a boy. "Hello, little man," Pinocchio called the driver. "Did you ever see such a thing? This donkey is crying. Let him cry. He can laugh on Tibb's Eve. Did you teach him to talk?" "No, he taught himself to mumble a few words when he was in a company of trained dogs for 3 years. Poor beast." "Come, come," said the little man. "Don't waste time watching a donkey cry. Get on to him again, and let us go. The night is cold and the way is long." Pinocchio obeyed without another word. The coach rolled again, and at dawn they arrived safely at Playland. Playland was like no other country in the world. The population consisted of children. The eldest was 14 and the youngest scarcely 8 years old. The merriment and shouting and noise in the streets were maddening. There were children everywhere. Some were playing skittles, some quoits, cycling or ball. Some were riding on wooden horses. Others were playing blind man's buff or chasings. Some were dressed as clowns and were eating burning tow. Some were acting or singing or reading or turning somersaults. Others were walking on their hands, while still others were trundling hoops or dressed like generals were marching along with paper helmets, ordering troops of soldiers about. There was laughing and shouting and hand clapping. Some were whistling, some were clucking like a hen that has just laid an egg. In short, there was such noise and confusion that without cotton wool in both ears, anyone would have been deafened by it. There were theatres crowded all day long in every open space, and on all the walls of the houses badly spelt remarks had been scribbled with charcoal. Immediately they got inside the city. Lampwick and the other boys who had come together hurried to join the children, and very soon, as you may well imagine, they became excellent friends. Who could be happier or more contented than they? Amidst continual games and all sorts of pastimes, hours, days, and weeks passed like lightning. "Oh, what a beautiful life!" shouted Pinocchio every time he met Lampwick. "Do you at least see that I was right?" answered Lampwick. "And to think you didn't want to come! To think you intended to go back to your fairy and wasting your time in studying! If you are free today from nasty books and schools, you owe it to me, to my advice, to my insistence. It's only a real friend who would show such kindness." "Yes, that's true, Lampwick. If today I am really happy, a really happy boy, I owe it all to you. And do you know what the master used to say to me about you? He always said, 'Don't have anything to do with that good-for-nothing Lampwick. He is a very bad boy, and will lead you into some trouble.'" "Poor old master," said the other, shaking his head. "I well know that he didn't like me and spoke ill of me, but I have a generous soul, and with pleasure I forgive him." "Noble boy," said Pinocchio, embracing his friend and kissing him affectionately on the forehead. 5 months had passed in this playland of toys and amusements which went on all day long without ever seeing a book or even the outside of a school, when Pinocchio, upon awaking one morning, had a very unpleasant surprise and lost his good spirits.